of the double. So either way, it's either ordered or unordered in helping you in resembling something or not resembling it. And again, I think this relates to words, and I felt that the not ordinary in that interpretation of it could possibly relate to you've got language and it points to something, it points to one thing, but what is not ordinary it does not point to, because it's outside of what you can express in that language.
Oh, that's great.
So that was the way I took that.
There's something very curious at Marjorie Perloff's article. She said Stein herself insisted that Tender Buttons was entirely realistic. In the tradition of Gustave Flaubert, I used to take objects on my table like a tumbler or any kind of object and try to get the picture of it clear and separate in my mind and create a word relationship between the word and the thing seen.
The relationship between the word and the thing seen.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is the first one in there again, I think means everything that follows. That's what she's doing. She's defining that relationship between the word and the thing seen. The way you describe it and what is being described.
Right. Well, and also opening up the possibility of what happens if one gives an array of new language to an object that doesn't already belong to it. So a carafe is a noun that refers to a thing, but what if, I think, to be literal about it, we could think of the language, not that Stein is using metaphor, but to think metaphorically about it, we have the carafe that is filled not only with wine, but with this language inside of it, in the same way that the wine doesn't belong necessarily to the carafe, but does once you put it in the same way that once we add this flow of language and attach it just through juxtaposition to the carafe, that language is now something in the carafe.
Well, it's
and in the same, I think, as an opening poem, in the same way, if we think about the point of a carafe is not to permanently hold wine; it's to ultimately pour it out and share and get drunk and talk with less inhibition. That, in a sense, we can think of this as the liquor language, as inebriating language that allows us to disinhibit our one-to-one pre-given attachments between words and things, and to allow things to swirl with new language that perhaps allows us not only to see the object differently, but to see the potential of language differently. That's my thought. Here you go.
So you're another optimist.
I want to talk. I think it's important that we talk about what you're saying and whether or not language's precision. Whether I'm filming Bob. No. You don't have to take me, but it's because I'm addressing Bob. Whether the idea of losing language's precision is necessarily, or why you would feel that would be negative. And I think it's important to remember that Stein is originally a scientist, a biologist. So she is coming from an initial relationship of language to things that is certainly that where language fastens onto things with extreme precision. Because you wouldn't want your surgeon to have a playful relationship with language. So or would you? And what would that mean? But I'm curious about going a little further into thinking about the difference between. I don't think that it's a matter of being an optimist or. Well, it is. It's a matter of how one considers the value of the relationship of language to thing. Right.
I agree with you, and my negative interpretation of this is solely based on the fact that hurt and blind. I don't see anything in here that gives a positive connotation to it. So if that's what she is talking about, why is there nothing in here that says that? Why is there painful words in here, or words where you can't see something, but nothing opposite? And that's why I take that interpretation.
Don't you take cousin positively? Or do you have bad relationship with your cousins?
Yes, I never had any good cousins.
I have a good cousin.
And cousins is also the term used to refer to the CIA, but I think that came later.
Oh, really? I mean, I personally, I can't say that I get a negative feeling from this poem. I think there are words that are deliberately a little ominous, and there are clusters of words together that are ominous, but I don't experience that as negative. I feel like I'm understanding from her, as I understand from other things I've read of her, that she's aware of threats. And I think one of the, obviously, I think one of the things that maybe is, to me, a little unclear in this poem is exactly where she's locating the threat. I mean, I do sense an ominous quality here. And to me, it is that system to pointing is part of it. And the word hurt. And I don't think I find this just playful. And I don't quite know what to make of the differences spreading. That could be this really joyous sort of declaration, or it could be something that, is meant to be joyous or painful, depending on, the moment that you're reading this poem. I'm curious. I mean, I do feel like there's a threat in this.
No two instances are ever identical.
Yeah.
Even when the same phrase is used, repeated over and over again, as is common in Stein, there is always difference. That's...
Yeah, what if the difference was
spreading
spreading, was repeated 5 times?
Right.
The difference is spreading, the difference is spreading, the difference, you could really understand how open-ended that is, and how, I guess, generative or fecund that open-endedness can be.
I'm still obsessed with this blind glass being a mirror, and that in the title, the carafe, that is a blind glass or a mirror, and blind glass implies an inability or kind of incapacity to see, and we think of glass as being something transparent or reflective, or as the transparent as seeing through, like a window, or transparent and seeing within, like seeing the wine within the carafe. But what would it mean for the carafe that doesn't resemble, or the word that doesn't resemble the object that it names? What would it be to look in a mirror and not to see oneself? And I think that, in a way, the poem allows us to, it deflects our projections of assuming we know what we're looking at, and assuming that our language is as transparent as glass.
Well, I think she would definitely not agree with the transparency of language. I think that's something. Also, she doesn't mention here mirror or glass. She leaves them out.
This blind glass,
Oh,
according to
corrupted
Bob,
as a blind glass.
is a mirror.
And everyone said rush to your dictionaries.
Right. Well, she leaves out eyeglasses, for instance.
But she has spectacles.
Spectacles. That's true. Well, that's a spectacle. That's a joyous, mad celebration. Not spectacles that you see with.
Don't be so literal.
Yeah, don't make a
Well,
spectacle of yourself.
spectacle is more literal than what I just said. Spectacle as eyeglasses is very literal. And I don't think she's ever literal. I still have trouble with in a system to pointing. We describe that as language language that is useful to point at an object, didn't we? Yeah. And I guess that's what she's saying there too.
But a carafe, though, is unusual. It's not a pitcher. It doesn't have a spout. So it doesn't exactly point to the person who will, to the thing into which the contents will be poured. It's a kind of, it could be poured for anyone. And I always think of the difference of spreading as the wine leaching across the tablecloth, which is my own private association based on nothing. Does anyone else have anything to add?